Most people listening to this are not going to lament the fact that they didn't run as fast as they could have when they were younger, or that they didn't punch or swim with as much, prowess as they could have. Where I think we should all care about this is that it's not just that the energy leakage costs you performance. It clearly does. It's that it predisposes you to injury. And that's where I think we have to bring this back, right? Is when I exercise today, I don't care about the performance. I care about the preservation and longevity of my body for whatever number of years I have left. So this is really where I think stability matters. It's, what are the exercises I need to be doing? What are the exercises my patient need to be doing? So that as we age and we walk up the flight of stairs or carry something heavy, we don't hurt ourselves because we don't have that core stability that can resist the deformation that's going to allow energy to seep out of the system.
Well said. A story was coming to mind as you were saying that. I'll be giving a lecture or teaching a class, and I'll show some data from an elite athlete. And there will be therapists and clinicians in the room who say, we don't deal with elite athletes. We deal with the elderly, or we deal with sick people. And I think, what are you thinking? I'm showing you what the human body has the potential to do. And your arrogance won't allow you to learn what is possible. And I'm going to give you a very emotional, I hope I can get through this, a very emotional story to show the arrogance that exists among some of our colleagues. Occasionally, medical groups, a hospital or whatever, will ask, would you come out and assess 3 patients in our auditorium in front of all our medical staff? I was at this facility, it was in Europe, and they brought out the first person was a rugby player, fair enough, and I had 20 minutes and declared what I thought was going on. The next one was a woman in her early 70s, clearly distraught. You could look at her posture, her carriage. She was defeated by the world. And she came onto the stage, and I said, can you tell me your story? And she said a few sentences. And then she said, but the therapist says that I have to leave my home now. When I get off the toilet, I'm a bit unsteady and she's afraid I'm going to fall on the floor. I can't get off the floor by myself and I'm just going to lay there and no one will discover me. I have to leave my home. She started to cry at this point, Peter. She said, what's going to happen to my cat and all this sort of stuff? And I said, really? Would someone please bring me out a stool? And this will be our simulated toilet. So an assistant brought in a stool onto the stage. I said, okay, pretend that's the toilet. Have a seat. She turned and had no idea how to move and just sort of plopped and collapsed on the toilet. And then I'm just going to turn this down because I want you to see my lower body kinematics as we're moving here. And then I said, would you get up off the chair? And I can't remember whether she was wearing a skirt or pants. Pants, I think it was, but nonetheless, knees together, and she just sort of collapsed, and I had to help her. She was going to collapse onto the floor. And so I said, I want you to humor me now. You're my mirror. And when I coach, I try and use minimum words. I said, do this with your hands. Put your kneecap between your thumb and your hands as you slide your hands down. Good. Now, I want you to be a leaning tower. Leaning tower forward and backwards, and play with the curve of your back. Do you have any pain now? She said, no. And I said, watch my shoulders. You're shrugged. I want you to anti-shrug. She did that. Perfect. And now I said, pull your hands up your thighs by pulling your hips through. Don't lift with your back. Pull your hips through. She had it done in 3 repetitions. That was not her pattern. And I said, okay, think of what we've just done and sit on the toilet. And I said, whoops, spread your feet apart. And there she went, slid her hands down. And now I said, and then she put her knees together. And I said, now stand up. And she was going right back to the incompetent movement that caused her inability and disability before. I said, spread your knees apart and pull your heels underneath you. Sniff some air. Now lean forward and do what you now know how to do. And she did a perfect squat. Do it again. And then by the third repetition, big smile came on her face. This is the emotional part. I said, what's up with you? She said, I don't have to leave my home, do I? I said, no. Do you know many of those hard-baked surgeons and clinicians started to cry as well? For the first time, they realized all I did was teach her weightlifting 101. And remember how this story started with the arrogance of some of our colleagues who say, I don't want to hear stories about elite athletes. I deal with old people or sick people. And that's why they continue to not have the skill set to help their people. All I did was learn from the best weightlifters in the world, people who know how to move load, learn what the efficiency was and turn it into a hack to change a person's life. Anyway, that's a pretty emotional story, and I hope we do that quite often. But it's a matter of, I know you like cars. Why does Honda race F1 race cars? Well, they don't anymore, but when they did, and the reason was they learned about automotive technology, and the gear shift change in your Honda Civic came from the F1 racetrack. So that's why we work with elite athletes, so I can bring it down. I love working with them, of course, but this is they just give it away free to us, and yet some of our colleagues are just so closed off, they don't want to hear about elite performance.
Let's talk a little bit about, first of all, that's an absolutely beautiful story, Stuart, and thank you for sharing that. It's a sadly common story too, and to me, I think the saddest part of that story is how many of those patients don't get the chance to sit on a stage with you for 30 minutes and learn that movement. I don't, you've been around long enough that I'm sure you have a better sense of this, but I feel maybe optimistically that we are in a place now where people are starting to appreciate the importance of strength and stability, and that we're less afraid of this. There's more discussion of the importance of resistance training, and that it's not a young guy thing to do. It's an everybody thing to do. But given the arc of your career, am I being just sort of delusional, or do you really think that we're in a coming of age here? I'm Peter Attia. This podcast relies exclusively on premium subscribers for support, which allows us to provide all our content without taking a single penny from advertisers. I believe this keeps my content honest, making it a trusted resource for listeners like you. As a premium member, you'll get immediate access to our entire back catalog of AMA episodes and all future AMA episodes. You'll get longevity-focused premium articles packed with actionable insights. You'll get unrivaled show notes for each and every episode of The Drive, every topic, every study, every resource from each episode carefully curated for you. You'll get quarterly podcast summaries where you'll learn my biggest personal takeaways from the previous 90 days of expert guest episodes and much more. This journey doesn't have to be navigated alone. We can take these steps towards a better, longer life together. Become a premium member today at peterattiamd.com/subscribe to join me in a shared commitment to a healthier future.